We're going to be assembling the folding tree cart today. These set of instructions that we're going to be going over today also apply to the half tree cart. It's the same cart, just half the length. Same amount of supports, same amount of hardware and bolts. It's just half as long as this cart. So those directions can be applied to the same. Let's get started. When you get this in, when you first order it in, you're going to get 3 of these cross braces with the rungs for the chairs. You're going to have a handle that's in a U shape. It's going to be in little packaging so it gets protected in shipping. You're going to have a box that has the casters in it. You're going to have 2 that are fixed and 2 that are swivel casters. You have your upright standards. There's 2 right now taped together for shipping purposes, and we'll cut those loose in a minute when we put the cart together. Then you have a brace that goes on the very bottom that puts it all together from the bottom. You also have the tools needed for this are going to be a 1/2 inch crescent wrench and a 1/2 inch socket. Wanted to give you a little close-up of the hardware just so that you can confirm that you have everything you need to put the cart together. You should have 16 of the hex bolts. You should have 40 of the flat washers, and you should have 24 of these 5/16 inch nylock nuts. And again, 1/2 inch wrench, 1/2 inch socket driver. All right, we're at step 1 to put this cart together. I want to put a little disclaimer here. It's best if we have 2 people to put this cart together so that someone can hold pieces while you're putting hardware together. You want to get the whole cart finger tight before you ratchet it all down so everything fits in properly. So you'll need 2 people to put the cart together. So as we get into step 1, you've got these 2 cross braces, upright supports, and you've got 1 cross brace. I want to point out here something you guys got to watch out for. So if you'll notice when we were looking at the hardware a minute ago, we had a lot more nuts than bolts. And that's because these come with 2 on each end for the 2 uprights. So there's 4 other bolts already welded onto the cart that you haven't accounted for with the nuts. So you should have more nuts than bolts. You also want to look at these flanges and see how they're bent in. That's because that's where the caster comes in. It's going to hook in here and put two nuts on it, and that's going to hold the caster on. The important part here is this bend has to be in the center of the cart. So when you position this, you're going to put it to where the crimped end is in the middle, not the outside. You'll also notice that there's these plates that are flush to the outside. You want those on the outside edge. If you get that orientated that way, you're good to go. So you want to get both of your uprights out. This is your middle cross brace that will bolt into these holes right there. And that's the first step. So our next step is to put the hardware in. You've got 2 bolts for each side on this cross support brace. So just lift this up a little bit, coach that bolt through, put your washer on, put your lock nut on. Again, you're just trying to get it finger tight so that we can go back and tighten it up once it's all together. Now we're on to the next step. We're going to put the top brace on here that has the bars to hang the chairs on. You want to make sure that you get these in a position that's upward and not downward so that the chairs hang on the rack properly. So we're going to come up and place this in position. Have somebody assist you with putting the bolts through the holes and getting the washers and the nuts in place. Keep steadying it while the person puts the second row of bolts in the holes. Again, in the first step, we've left the bolts kind of loose, so there will be a little bit of play in the whole cart. So one person kind of needs to steady it while the other person puts the bolts and the nuts on. And we'll go on to the next step. Now that we've got our rungs put together and the cross braces, we want to put our handle on. We need to leave the second hole of the second tier open. So that's going to be your bottom hole. And on the third rung, you want to leave the top hole open, and that's for our handle to go in place here. If you've already put the bolts in, that's okay. Just remove them as you'll need to put this handle on if you want to pull the cart around. It's also best at this point to have the person that's helping you kind of steady the rack, as all these bolts have not been tightened up yet. So it's a little on the loose side. So they need to keep things firm together and close together as we fit everything together. There you go, your handle's on. Now we're gonna go through this whole cart and we're gonna tighten down all these loose bolts. Now we're on to the last step. We need to put the casters on. To do that, we need to tilt this cart back on its side. So have somebody help you. Lay this cart back down on its end. And that's gonna expose these pads. We're gonna talk about what to do with those, with these casters. So when you get these casters, you're gonna have 4 that come in the box. 2 are gonna be swivel, which means they turn, and 2 are fixed, which means they don't turn. You want the swivel ones on the front of the cart. The front of the cart is the side that has the handle. So when you pull that cart, you can steer and navigate the cart itself. Something to point out on these casters, they are non-marring surfaces. They have grease nuts here and also here. There's 2 bearings that are inside here. You want to maintain those about once a year, get some grease and use a grease gun and be able to fill those up so that you're maintaining them. Again, it's a very high quality caster. It's a non-marring wheel itself, so it won't hurt your floors. Now that we've explained some of the particulars of the caster, let's show you how to put it on the cart. So this plate will spin around. It's universal. Doesn't matter which goes on which holes. You want to you have this tab and you want to insert this at kind of a 45-degree angle and then bring that up in to the caster. Your 2 bolts will poke through those holes, and that's where you're going to slap on the washer and the nut. Repeat that for all 4 legs, and you should be good to go. Okay, now that we got our casters on, I wanted to show you just a couple other things before we're done. The cart will come with plastic wrap around that caster. So you want to take those off so that they're protected in shipping. So you don't want to wheel the cart around with those on at all. Now we're ready to turn this back up on its side. Couple of things to note. You do have brakes on the front, swivel casters. So you always want to apply those as you are loading a cart. So my brakes are on, pretty stable. When you load this cart, it's naturally you want to load it top down, just out of habit. The safest way to load this cart is to load the bottom up. So that bottom goes on first, but you want to load that bottom, then come over to this side and load this bottom so that its weight is evenly distributed in the cart as we go upwards. How you would load chairs on this cart is the top of the chair goes towards the handle. So this direction. On the cart like so. So that's the mesh one stacking chair or folding chair. The flex one is going to basically fit the same way. The Swift set folding chair. And this is our flex upholstery or the LX chair. You can see there's a spot in relatively the same location on each chair and how it fits on this cart. Once you get it loaded up, you're ready to use it. Thanks for buying MityLite products.